What is going on, Alabama fans? Chris Daughtry here with the Alabama Football Report by Chat Sports. And coming up here on today's show, we are going to be discussing how Brian Kelly's firing will end up impacting Alabama. Now, we do have a bye week this week, but after that, LSU will be coming to town, and they actually announced today when that game would take place. It's going to be a 6:30 p.m. Central Time kickoff, so we're going to get another night game there in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and I'm sure we're going to show some LSU fans how to get business done at night. I want to hear from you guys, though. We're going to make this one the pinned comment of today's video. Predict the score to Alabama versus LSU. Let me know what you guys think. Is it going to be a blowout, or is this still going to be kind of like that South Carolina game where, it's a team that hasn't looked very good, but they're still going to be, coming out here fighting with a lot of, emotion in that game. So let me know, is that game going to be close, or is it going to be a blowout? Predict the score down inside the comment section. All right, so LSU has now fired Brian Kelly after a very embarrassing performance against Texas A&M. So much for LSU night games really being an intimidating atmosphere. Now, they have back-to-back seasons, last year against Alabama and now this year against Texas A&M, where they have cleared the stadium on LSU during a night game. By the end of the game, there was nobody left there in Tiger Stadium. And LSU Director of Athletics Scott Woodward is now responsible for the firing and hiring of both Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M and now Brian Kelly at LSU, who will both be now the two highest buyouts in college football history. LSU offensive coordinator Joe Sloan, by the way, was also fired today. Tight ends coach and running game coordinator Alex Atkins will now be the active play caller for LSU. Now, he was a non-play calling offensive coordinator at Florida State over the past couple years, but now he's actually going to be calling plays for LSU for the remainder of the season. Brian Kelly at LSU, it was 13-14, did make one appearance in the SEC championship game in 2022, but they ended up losing that one. And then also Jaden Daniels did win the Heisman in 2023, and then he was later the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. But I'll be honest, I put that more on Jaden Daniels just being a freak of nature than I put it on, Brian Kelly being a good coach. I remember when people were saying that, he's a good coach, but he can't win a national championship at Notre Dame because of the high academic standards. You can't get the level of player at Notre Dame that you could at LSU. He ends up, jumping ship, going down to LSU. Now, he's still a good coach, but it just wasn't the right fit at LSU, which I do think is still kind of true. But maybe the real problem is Brian Kelly is just the best mediocre coach in college football. So how does this now affect Alabama? Well, both teams have a bye week coming up this week, but then LSU is going to be coming to town, and now they're going to be led by interim head coach, former running backs coach at LSU, and associate head coach Frank Wilson. Now, he does have experience in a lot of different areas when it comes to leading a college football program. He had some very, very good recruiting success when he was at LSU before as a recruiting coordinator back in 2010 to 2015. 2011, he was actually named as the Rivals National Recruiter of the Year. And in his time in that same time frame at LSU, they had 29 players actually selected in the NFL draft, only second to Alabama in that same time frame there. And over the past since 2005, really, he's had a lot of different types of positions when it comes to his coaching career. Started back, he was in high school for a couple years there, but then was at Ole Miss as the running backs and special teams coach from 2005 to 2007. Then he went to Southern Miss. Then after that, he was at Tennessee as their wide receivers coach in 2009. Then from 2010 to 2015, he was at LSU. Then he was the head coach of UTSA. And then after that, or for 3 years, he was at UTSA. And then he was at McNeese State as their head coach from 2020 to 2021. And then he came back on with LSU from 2002 to 2025. Now he is going to be their interim head coach. So I want to hear from you guys down inside the comment section. Who will be the next head coach at LSU? Wrong answers only. Be creative. Let me know down in the comments section. Somebody needs to throw some water near Matt Moscona because LSU is burning right now. All right, we want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's show. That is Prize Picks. The hard-hitting football action is even better with Prize Picks, and the weather might be changing right now, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks is the only app, by the way, that offers stacks, meaning that you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You want more than on Josh Allen pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns? Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. This is what we got cooked up for the Monday night slate of games tonight, going with Deebo Samuel. More than rushing plus receiving. So that's total yards there for Deebo Samuel's at 49.5. Going with the less than on Marcus Mariota passing yards, and then going with a more than on Patrick Mahomes passing touchdowns. That is, by the way, the power play. Now on Prize Picks, you can play, or how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, you can choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks does not hit. And if you want the biggest payout, go for the power play, which we just showed you right there. No matter how you play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That link is down in the comment section and the description of today's show. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Now, we want to talk about some recruiting rumors here as well today. I think the biggest question now, with the firing of a bunch of coaches now across some major college football programs, whether it's LSU, whether it's Penn State, or whether it's Florida, will Alabama now try to start poaching recruits from LSU's 2026 and possibly even their 2027 class as well? LSU right now in their 2026 recruiting class, they are ranked at number 11 nationally in the 247 Sports Composite rankings, but there is now a possibility that we could see a slew of recruits flip or end up decommitting from the LSU Tigers. A couple names that, have either visited or Alabama or just had some interest from this Alabama coaching staff that I wanted to, throw out here for you guys. Trenton Henderson, Alabama does indeed love an edge rusher, and Trenton Henderson right now is the number 7 edge rusher in this 2026 recruiting class. He was offered by Alabama. I do even think he took an unofficial visit, but he never actually took an official visit. So we'll see. Maybe there's still a couple more weeks left in the season. Maybe he could schedule an official visit to Tuscaloosa for one of these remaining home games. Kenny Darby is also a name to monitor, I think. Alabama was in his top 2. He committed to LSU, and then he took an official visit to Alabama on May 30th, and then Alabama and LSU were still kind of in his top 2 there, and then he made it official there. I believe it was on July 4th. Is when he ended up, officially committing to LSU. And then Bryson Cooley as well. He was also on an official visit to Alabama on May 30th as well, same weekend there as Kenny Darby. I know it seems like, Alabama's probably set right now in terms of their offensive line class in 2026, but you never know, man. Recruiting is a weird time, especially right now when you have NIL and all this other stuff that you're talking about. So, hey, I think those are 3 names that Alabama has been interested, here in this 2026 recruiting cycle that you could possibly see, one of these guys maybe, at least being targeted anyways for a flip in Alabama's 2026 recruiting class. So will the Crimson Tide flip any LSU recruits? Let me know what you guys think. Predict for me down inside the comment section. Type Y for yes or N for no. Will Alabama flip any of LSU's 2026 commits? Now, I think the most logical thing is maybe you end up poaching the roster in the transfer portal. I feel like a lot of the money right now is already allocated when it comes to these high school recruits. You got to think that Alabama probably feels pretty good about where they sit in their 2026 recruiting class. But I will say this as well. What Alabama has done, especially over the past year with Courtney Morgan being their GM, is they build the roster with high school recruits, and then they fill some of these major holes through the transfer portal. If you end up if you do that, though, it would most likely wouldn't be any type of splashy name, I don't think. I can't imagine that Alabama is going to spend, a crazy amount of money on a guy like Harold Perkins Jr. He's a great player. Don't get me wrong. I would love to have him on this team, but he just might be out of budget right now for Alabama. And that is if he doesn't declare for the NFL draft anyways. But I do think that there are some, possible holes that Alabama's going to need to fill next year. You probably want an experienced linebacker. The offensive line is about to lose some bodies there as well. Maybe some more experience along the defensive line. Alabama is always looking for edge rushers too. They may flip somebody in their 2026 recruiting class, but I think with the, coaching turnover at these big-time schools like LSU, Florida, and Penn State, it's probably more likely that Alabama tries to recruit some experienced players out of the transfer portal. You can see some of these guys right now, Jaden Roberts, Geno Vandermark, Cam Dewberry. All of those guys are going to be out of eligibility this year. Tim Keenan, he's a massive leader on this team along the interior of that defensive line. LT Overton on the defensive line as well. All three of your starters at linebacker going to be gone. They're out of eligibility as well. So, I love what Alabama has in terms of that depth at linebacker right now, but you would like some experience, I think, as well. And then some other guys, draft-eligible starters. Ty Simpson, I don't think anybody really expects Alabama to go out there and, go after any type of, LSU, Florida, Penn State quarterback commits. You never know what could happen there, but I just don't really expect that, especially when you have, two commits already at quarterback in that 2026 class coming in. Isaiah Horton, maybe you look at receiver, Parker Brailsford, Caden Proctor, two more offensive linemen right there. So that's 5 total offensive linemen that are probably going to be gone after the season here. Keon Sabb, Bray Hubbard, I don't know. Maybe they end up trying to go to the NFL draft, but right now I just don't really see it. James Smith kind of in that same boat there. And then Quay Russaw, I think he has the talent to possibly go to the NFL draft, but especially with his injury right now that's going to have him out for the foreseeable future, I don't really expect he would be a guy that would end up going to the draft. So there are definitely some positions that I think Alabama could target in the transfer portal, especially from these really big-time schools that are now out on their head coaches. Now, we will have a full Alabama versus LSU preview next week, so make sure you guys are subscribed. It's going to be a bye week this week, so obviously there's going to be no watch party, but we got you guys covered on all things Crimson Tide news.